Oh, hi, everybody. It's a privilege for me, Jason Barron, and Professor Victoria Van Heining, um, to be with David Mengel, who is Deputy Director of the National Declassification Center at the National Archives and Records Administration. Um, Thanks, David, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So the reason we're here is to talk about the vacancy announcement that just came out for archives technician positions at NARA in the National Declassification Center. And Victoria and I thought that it would be great to socialize this among our iSchool students. So why don't we just get into it? Why don't you describe declassification work at NARA generally, and then we'll get into the position itself.
Sure. As many people may know, the National Archives takes in historically valuable um, permanent records of the federal government. And some of those permanent records include classified records that are created during the course of business through a variety of agencies. And those records are brought into the National Archives. And our office was established in 2010 to handle declassification. We take those records and put them through review processes, and we make those records available to the public. We like to think our primary focus at least is to make these records available as soon as possibly can to the public, and really put the information out there to the researchers, to the public, so they can see what the inner workings are of the federal government.
And you have conversations all the time with intelligence agencies of all kinds because they have equities in the documents, right?
Yes, in fact, we have close to a dozen agencies that work in the building with us. They're there on a daily basis. We work with them very closely on any number of classified issues. We address their documents that are transferred. We address other agency documents that have their equities in it. We basically facilitate all the review that's done on classified records at the National Archives.
I'm going to ask that we define equities for those in the audience who
Sure.
haven't come across that term.
So we have two types of information. One is the information that's generated by the creating agency. So you have a creating agency, we'll say the Department of Army. They would have equity in that document. They have information in that document that is valuable to them. Another agency may have provided them information, let's say the Navy. They may have given information to the Army in a joint operation or some other reason for transferring that information. So while the document itself belongs to the Army has equity in it, and then the Navy would have interest in the information that they provided to the Army. So it doesn't necessarily, the creating organization isn't always the one that has all the equity in the document. Multiple agencies could have equity in a single document, but it's basically the information that they provide and they can protect.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there are 11 positions open with this
There are.
vacancy announcement. So give us a sense of just sort of the overview, the 30,000-foot perspective of what you're looking for as an archives technician.
We are looking for people that have an interest in history, that have an interest in records management, that have an interest in information management, that we like people with degrees. That is not a requirement, but we tend to find that the people with degrees have gone through the training that they need to really look and think outside the box. We don't want somebody that's going to come in, and while at least the entry level position is a lot of data entry and hands-on type of information work, we like people that are going to ask questions. We like people that are going to think outside the box. We like people that are going to question an agency and when an agency makes a decision. And we like to, people that are going to think on their own. And we find that people with backgrounds in information management and history in any of the research disciplines have that ability. And that's really what we're trying to do, is bring those people into the building and train them from the ground up. I myself started as a GS5 technician 30 years ago. I've worked at a variety of different functions within the National Declassification Center organization and in other offices within the agency. So it's been a very I've been very lucky with my career. Let's just say that.
Let me just do as an aside. I started as a GS4 clerk typist during college, and then after law school got a GS11 position as in a general counsel's office. So one starts somewhere and one can proceed. We'll get to that. But Victoria, you can put up the announcement if you want, and if you can, there are duties that are in the announcement.
Mhm.
First thing I want to say is that you can see right here that you have to be a U.S. citizen
Yes.
to have a job here. But if you scroll down to the duties, yeah, if you just stop there, David, can you just, I don't know, summarize for us what, what you're looking for is what a day in the life of an archives technician would be, a day or a week or whatever.
On a daily basis, people would be working with handling classified records, mostly capturing metadata on the information that's still classified. So the way our process works, the records go through a review, and these are the actual original records that were created by the agency. They are identified as declassified, or we put what's called a tab around them, a paper slip that goes around them, and an agency can identify that that document is still classified. So these entry-level positions would take those classified documents, capture the metadata on them, and physically pull those documents out and replace them with a withdrawal notice with a place marker. And those would be what the researcher that would then see. So the original box would then go to the shelf. It goes out to the research room. A researcher is then able to look at the box, see all the declassified records, and identify which records have been withdrawn. In addition, they're doing a lot of work, preservation work on the records. They're doing some description work on the records. They're actually looking at the records to determine if an agency's made the right call or if they've missed information. We've had a lot of records that have gone through the entire review process and an agency has missed something. So those people are catching that at the tail end. So it's a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, it's a lot of, can be a little bit, I don't know what's the right word for it. It can be a little monotonous at times.
Maybe, well, a little bit overwhelming if you first come in, but you can
There
get
could
used
be.
to the job.
Yes.
And there's a lot to process, right?
There is. There is a lot to process. And one of the reasons we're hiring 11 people is because the people we bring in, we train them and they end up moving up within our organization. They get jobs with other organizations within the National Archives. We have some that go to the agency declass programs and become declassification reviewers. So this is really a foot in the door, a really good baseline knowledge development type position that will help people move on. I myself started as an archives technician, so it's one of those little things that you get in, you learn. If you're very good at what you do, you're focused, you can learn and apply your knowledge. You can ask the right questions. There's a lot of opportunities if this is something, a field you want to get into.
Right.
David, I have a question. I know Jason has several, but to what extent are the materials purely analog? Is there much more digital content?
So we do have a little bit of born digital. As I like to tell people, though, we live in the past. Most of the records we're seeing are 25 years old. They're not transferred to the archives until they're 25 or 30 years old usually. So we do have some electronic records, and that's actually one of the things we've been doing with a lot of our staff is trying to train them in how to handle digital records and what to do with them as they come in. So we do have a whole separate unit that handles special media. We do most of our work in textual right now, but we're getting more and more electronic. We've got a lot of special media, films, audio recordings, microfilm. We deal in all different formats.
Great, thanks for that.
What else should people know? There's a deadline of May 1st,
Yes.
Which is maybe the most important thing why we're doing this video. What other qualifications or anything else you want to speak to this job specifically?
Well, you mentioned the citizenship requirement, but there is a requirement to be able to get and maintain a security clearance. And so there will be a background investigation. The way the process works is you would be hired and then go through the background investigation, which could take 6 months to a year. During that time, you'll be trained in different archival disciplines, working on different archival projects, doing rotations with other units, just so we can get you a lot of background experience before you start doing the D-class work. Once you get cleared, then it's a lot of intensive training on declassification equities, handling all the processes and the computer systems that we deal with, and just learning. So the first couple years are pretty much just learning a lot about the archives, a lot about the process declassification.
All right.
One last question for me. So when I applied for my job at the Library of Congress a few years ago, I was told, despite whatever you may think when you read the job qualifications and other things, as somebody who maybe, you know, has a sense of what they don't know, you might be inclined to give yourself a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5 on those. I can't remember what they're called, not KSF, but it's those targets.
Yes.
Key something. And that you, to even get through the door, or to even get through the automated system that's checking the viability of applications, you need to rank yourself a 5 out of 5 on everything, even if it seems insane. Is that true?
What I like to tell people is I do not encourage falsifying your application or lying, but I do encourage you to look at skills that you may not have a skill that specifically speaks to the requirement or to the question they ask you, but look at everything you do. My example I tend to use is a supervisory skill. You know, if you're applying for a supervisory job, maybe you've never been a supervisor before, but you worked at a fast food restaurant and you were a shift leader or some other position that maybe you weren't doing it in an archival setting, but you developed those leadership skills. So there's a lot of things, you know, maybe you were a club president in college, or there's other things that you did or have learned over your time in school or even in your work career that you can apply to those positions. So people tend to look at it and say, in the lens of, I've never worked at an archive, so I really don't know how to do this, but really explore the question and look at different ways that you fit those requirements or you meet those skill sets, because a lot of people do meet those skill sets and don't realize it. So really, I like to tell people that just really look at what you do and what you've learned and how it applies.
Thank
Victoria,
you. Yes, that's a much more politic way of saying,
Yeah.
saying we're helpful too. Thank you.
Victoria, maybe you can take down the screen and we'll just have one
Sure.
more thing that I want to ask David, which is, hey, I considered my 13 years in NARA to be a dream job. And I know the job was a little different than this one, but why don't you just give a sense of your own experience at NARA and, you know, supporting the mission and a sense of the people working there and how they view their career, their job.
A lot of us are history librarians. We've come into the career knowing what we wanted to do. I myself didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied for a job at the archives as a temporary job for a summer, and they offered me a full-time job, so I took it, and it was the best decision I ever made. The work we do is so important, you know, preserving the history of our government, and the things that I've had the opportunity to work on. Jason, I think I met you when I was working with the Nixon tapes.
Right.
I've worked with the JFK assassination collection. You know, I've had so many different opportunities and have enjoyed every single one of them. And it's just, I'm a curious person, and seeing behind the scenes and seeing the documents as they're created and understanding what was going on at the time is just fascinating to me. And being able to preserve that and provide that to the people, I just get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. And most of the people you'll find that work at the archives do have that level of joy and satisfaction in their job. It's fun, and we enjoy doing it. I enjoy going to work every day, and I've had some great experiences. It's just very rewarding.
It was for me too. And so thank you, David, so much for sharing a few of these, your observations about the position. We will make sure to have everyone be aware of it as much as possible at the iSchool. So we really appreciate it, and we appreciate your service to the country as well as Deputy Director of the very important National Declassification Center. Thank you, David, and thanks, Victoria, for joining me in this.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
thanks for spearheading.
All right.